Okay, planning board, we are live. We are recording. Phone lines will remain off. You're good to go.
Very good. Thank you very much. Welcome to the September 14th, 2022 meeting of the Town of East Hampton Planning Board. Summertime done come and gone, and now we're ready to get through the remainder of the year. We have a number of matters on for site plan review and a number of matters on for regular meeting, various resolutions. There was a public hearing that had been on the agenda earlier on, but that's not going to be on tonight. So if anybody's here for the public hearing, you can go if you want. Okay. But we will start with the East Hampton Healthcare Foundation matter. And that's yours. Yep. And Eric, you're covering everything for the town board, yep. For the planning department, I should say? Yep. That's another night. Okay. Okay. And the applicant is here on that. Okay.
Okay. So a public hearing was held at the last meeting on August 24th. An attorney representing a neighboring business spoke at the hearing and submitted a letter to the file. The letter notes that there is a 20-foot wide easement between their property and the Healthcare Foundation property that is utilized as a road to serve numerous commercial properties. They expressed concern regarding parallel parking in this easement and its potential blocking of emergency access. The owners of the neighboring property are concerned that adding a fence on the edge of the easement will lead to cars going back to parking parallel to it and partially blocking the road. Also suggesting that it would set a bad precedent to allow commercial properties to install fences along adjacent heavily trafficked roads. The applicant responded that the reason they were erecting the fence in the first place was because they were getting violations for parking along the easement, noting that their intention is to put up no parking signs along the proposed fence. Additionally, they noted that the proposed fence will not be exactly along the property line, but rather 2 or 3 feet back from the property line. The no parking signs have already been approved by the Architectural Review Board. The Planning Department finds that there is no reason that the applicant cannot place a fence along the boundary of their own property and notes that there is an additional wire fence that already exists adjacent to the property line and the location of the proposed fence. The department notes that there should be no parking allowed in the easement as is, and coupled with the no parking signs proposed by the applicants, this should be enough to address the comment from the neighboring property. Nevertheless, as with any public hearing and public comments, the board should discuss those comments and determine if they've been adequately addressed. One of the only outstanding issues was a sign off from the fire marshal, which has been received. So therefore, in conclusion, if the board finds that the public comments have been adequately addressed, then the application is ready for approval.
Thank you. Does the applicant wish to be heard on this?
Not at this time. Thank you.
Very good. Ed.
Yeah, no, that was a pretty good summation that Eric just gave of the situation. And I think between the fact that the fence is actually a couple of feet off, off the property line, and the fact that no parking signs will be put up and they've already been approved, I think the comments have been adequately addressed.
Does anyone have anything they want to add on this particular one?
Just in terms of the, any of us that go down to the shop or buy food, the parking there is not great. And I remember in the past that the Turtle Crossing restaurant worked out a private arrangement with the Tintle office building next door to use that parking lot. And also that Tintle owns that whole big lot that goes back along healthcare. So I don't know if he or somebody might want to look at putting some more parking, but
that's not within our
no.
jurisdiction.
It's just acknowledging the objector's point that there's lousy traffic parking. There's some planning board probably didn't set it up parking beside.
Couldn't possibly know that you were. I know I was in favor of public hearing on this because I'm familiar with that area also, because there were objections from neighboring property owners, and I thought that it was useful to air those out, and I think we can address as well as it can be. Does anyone else have anything you want to add on it? If not, then the question is, have we addressed the public's concerns adequately?
I believe so, yeah.
Is there consensus to that effect?
Yes.
Okay, and is the application ready for approval?
Yes.
Okay, and no objections will be ready to approve. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next item on is 92 South Euclid, modification, that's, Karen, that's yours. And you're covering that as the applicant, and you're here on that one? Regularly, Eric will go first, then you'll go, and then we'll go.
An application was previously approved to construct a two-story, 1,058 square foot commercial building with a second affordable apartment and basement. The project site is located on South Euclid Avenue in downtown Montauk and Zone CB, Central Business. The building was to consist of a 1,058 square foot first floor dry retail, a 1,058 square foot apartment on the second story, and 945 square foot basement. The application was also approved by the ZBA regarding variances for the parking in the right-of-way and for required side yard setbacks that were permitted to be reduced from 10 feet to 7 feet. The applicant is now requesting a modification of the approval to add 3 AC units, air conditioning units, to the eastern side of the building, 1 for the apartment and 2 for the 2 commercial retail shops, and to add 4 above ground propane tanks to be added in the trash enclosure, 1 for the on-demand hot water heater, and the other 3 for the high-efficient furnaces to heat and cool the building. Additionally, the architectural plans for the building have been slightly modified to allow for signage in front of the building. The proposed AC units are on the side yard of the property, close to 4 feet from the neighbor's property line. Thusly, noise could be a concern for future tenants for the neighboring property. Additionally, were the AC units to be counted as an accessory structure, which they are, it would compromise the side yard setback, and a variance from the ZBA would be required. However, I'll get to that in a second. It should be noted that none of the neighboring properties along South Euclid Avenue have AC units in the side yards of their respective properties. However, in the case of this particular property and building, there isn't a particularly better place to install them. The board should discuss whether they wish to waive the accessory structure setbacks, which is your prerogative, given that the AC units are a necessary component of the building. Additionally, should the board decide to waive the accessory structure setbacks, the board should discuss whether or not they would want additional shielding or noise mitigation for the units, whether in the form of fencing or vegetative screening. The proposed propane tanks are proposed to be directly set against the building inside the trash enclosure and are 100 gallons each in capacity. None of the neighboring properties have similar above ground gas containers adjacent to their respective buildings. For this to meet the requirements of the New York State Fire Code, 2 sides at the bottom of the trash enclosure cannot be solid, which would entrap propane gas if it were to leak within a closed space. Those 2 sides, per the fire marshal, should be lattice work. The board should discuss this requirement with the applicant and make it a condition of approval should the application, the modification application, be deemed complete and approved. In conclusion, the board should discuss whether or not they wish to waive the side yard setback requirement for the AC units. Should they decide to, they should discuss the possibility of any additional shielding for noise mitigation or screening or vegetative screening. Additionally, the board should discuss the proposed propane tanks and require that 2 sides at the bottom of the trash enclosure be ventilated with lattice work as per the fire marshal. If the board does decide that the accessory structure setback is to be waived and that the propane tanks will be allowed in the place that they're proposed, then you could deem this modification application complete and decide whether or not you want to grant that modification. And I will zoom in. I'll get you the aerial in a second, but I'll zoom in on the site plan to show you the location here of those various structures. So obviously South Euclid to the front of the property here, going towards the rear in the middle here. And hopefully you can see my cursor. These are the AC units that are proposed along the side of the building. Again, they are within the required side yard setbacks for accessory structures. Again, the board has the the ability to waive those setbacks. And then the 4 propane tanks are proposed in the dumpster enclosure at the rear of the building here. And I'll call the aerial up for you as you discuss the modification request.
Applicant wish to be heard.
I honestly think Eric kind of covered everything. If you guys have any questions, I'm happy to answer them, but. Oh, Katie Osiki from East End Land Planning.
I have a question. It seems to me something like this, both the propane tanks and the air conditioning units would have been something that would have been initially considered when the plans were drawn up. It just seems very odd that this is something that comes in. The air conditioning units are an essential part of a building. How could that be overlooked? And now it's being brought up as a modification to the site plan. I'm surprised we didn't pick it up.
So
It was very strong, right?
I mean, we did the application together, and I'll be honest, we were in front of you guys almost 3 years, I think, with this one. And I didn't know that AC units needed to be on a site plan. And residential, they don't until recently, so.
Well, I guess, as far as we're concerned, that's something we really look forward to, state that it's embedded somewhere within the building structure.
I did,
Especially in this case where you have to relax setbacks and all of that.
so I did look at a couple of the more recent ones that you guys did approve, and if the AC units weren't granted as less than 10 feet, the trash enclosure kind of was. So these are really small lots, and unfortunately.
The other question I have, propane tanks.
Mhm.
Is it possible to bury the tanks? I mean, they have underground propane.
There are, but there is absolutely no room with where the septic system is to meet those setbacks. And then part of our CBA approval was to plant a tree, which in the front, so we can't really put it in the front. So there's just no room.
The setbacks on the property.
Let's put Sharon.
Yeah. No, I mean, I had the same thought, Lou. I was like, wow, we missed this after 3 years of reviewing this application. And, I'm a little conflicted as to whether I want to send this back to the ZBA or not, or could we have a public hearing for a modification, I guess?
You usually don't.
Yeah. So, I mean, I feel like this is almost a public hearing situation. But to delay it, I mean, I know it's under construction. So I'm a little conflicted as to how to go with this. And then the sound attenuation, how good are they for air conditioning units? I mean,
They're not that noisy, frankly.
No,
they're
especially.
not that noisy?
No.
Oh, okay. See, I don't have air conditioning in my house.
These are three.
Yeah.
I beg to differ. My neighbor just put in an air conditioning unit on the side of his house. And if I sit on my deck, it's really disturbing. I mean, I hear that humming sound.
But most of these are commercial buildings, most of them, right?
Yeah.
They're all in one level.
In the midst of commercial buildings.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it makes a difference, but the neighboring property, Beckman's property, their AC units are on that same side as well. It does meet the
Oh,
10
yeah,
feet,
they-
but it is there. Yeah. You don't happen to have.
So they're both on that same
So it's on the
alley.
overhead.
I don't.
Yeah.
Shouldn't it be on the overhead?
Well,
They
that's,
haven't built it yet.
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, so they will be.
I mean, it's a much big, the lot is almost twice the size though.
They need setbacks.
Yeah.
Right, but the point is that if they have air conditioning units on the side there, it's sort
They
of.
have their own noise
They
going.
have their own noise going. So the question then is, how much noise are you adding to their noise? So.
I mean, I think this is, probably a necessary item for this building, and if there's no other place for it, I'm not sure how to.
We should have picked it up, and we didn't.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not sure that's our responsibility, honestly.
Pick it up, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's,
But they might have had fans in mind.
Well, there's a mechanical room and an attic in this building. I'm just wondering, have you guys looked at putting in the mechanical room or
An,
that?
an AC condenser, I mean, the furnace
They
will
have to be
go.
outside.
Yeah, the AC
Yeah.
condenser has, I mean, we looked
They have to.
at doing the small split zones. We tried to get rid of the propane altogether. Most of the other buildings that were built were oil, so they're in the basement too, to get rid of the propane, but we can't meet the energy code doing oil.
I don't mind the
So-
propane tanks as much because they'll be covered and they're not really noisemakers and they'll be covered up.
You will
So I
need a
have-
lattice. You-
Definitely do lattice for that.
Yeah.
Didn't
you
know
say
that.
you-
Go ahead, Mike.
So my comments are exactly Lou's comments from the beginning, where how could this have been overlooked? And I've only been here since January, so this. Were there any plans to put AC in? And what were they? And my other question is, where else can these go? Because I was there this morning, I took a photo. It is so tight there. And sure, if there's other AC units on the other side, it's going to be a perfect storm of AC sounds coming up. Where else can they go? Where else can these?
Honestly, there's really nowhere. I mean, you have the front of the building where you access, and on the back side, you have ADA compliancy that we need to meet. And on the side is the sidewalk. So that side, nothing is really going on. So
You might be able to cut into the roof and put them up there. You know, have a little platform on the side of the roof.
Well,
That
then,
doesn't really add
Yeah, it's
help
not
to
gonna
the
do
noise.
No.
No, it actually just throws the noise off to the whole neighborhood.
Right. Gets it higher.
Did you say you considered electric as opposed to propane, putting mini splits in instead of?
it was going to be a lot of them. And the noise, I mean, the new AC units, they're really not that loud.
Yeah.
I mean, those old AC units, they're loud.
The split units also have an outdoor portion. So
Exactly.
They're super quiet.
But don't they have to have a condenser also?
They do.
They do,
Yeah,
and
they're
we
very
would be
quiet.
back here asking for that same thing.
Okay.
Question, what if you have all those propane tanks that you're gonna have separate accounts?
So the idea was that we have an on-demand hot water heater that was going to be for one, and that's mostly for the apartment. And then there was going to be a different zone for each one.
Because obviously you could use a 500 gallon, a big tank instead of 40.
I'm okay with the propane tanks like Jeremy, but it's that side yard that's 7 feet and you're putting 3 of those condensers and yeah, what is the best sound attenuation fencing or whatever you want to call it out there? What is available to? I have one condenser outside my house that was broken and I fixed today, but you know, it puts out a lot of sound. That's one residential.
So we are in a commercial district here. And there are 3. They might be able to get away with 2. I wanted to ask for more and it might come back to 2, but I'd hate to come back a second time here asking for a third.
Well, you have to meet hers here too, right?
Exactly. So that was,
that's a factor, things you just need to do, right?
yeah, and there's the apartment above. So the idea was 1 condenser for upstairs and then 1 for each of the units downstairs.
What about a window well? Would that be more palatable to the wood?
Putting it in a window.
A well for the,
Yeah, you dig down, fill with the concrete.
Well, at this point, the foundation's already in and it's being framed. So they've
I
already.
don't know if there's enough clearance in a well for a compressor anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, I have a question too. What if we say no? What do you do?
They go to zoning board, I guess.
so we didn't set that one.
The only positive about the zoning board is that you get a hearing.
We could have a hearing if we wanted to, I believe, right, Eric?
Yeah, you have that option.
Okay.
Well, you know, it sounds to me like what we're concerned about is the noise and the impact on the public. And we're kind of caught up in the idea that this should have been before us, you know, this question should have been before us. So maybe the answer is, I mean, I understand it'll delay matters for you, but if not as much as it would delay matters if we, certainly it wouldn't be as bad as if we outlined projected and that what it is we get, schedule that, and then have a public hearing there. So it's a matter of getting a public hearing on this, if that's going to address the board's concerns.
I don't know if
And I don't know if it will
we'll delay it that much,
necessarily, because we
Public
may
hearing,
hear from
you're
the
no
public and
ZBA.
still have these same issues.
Or you may not hear from the
Or
public.
we may not hear from them, which is, not an unusual occurrence.
I mean, being a commercial zone, I mean, and then the Beckman building's not even up yet, they haven't even broken ground.
No, no. Well, I'm just floating, the possibility of, looking for a way for us to,
I mean, I
and
think
not
that's-
delay the applicant
And I think that's what I would suggest, is.
for a public hearing,
Yeah.
schedule for a public hearing. How does the board feel about that?
Well, maybe we can just finish going around and
Their proposed,
Well,
I mean, I don't see anywhere, I mean,
let's make sure we don't issue with the propane tanks. Anyone have an issue with the propane tanks in back?
No.
Because
I
I
don't.
want to make
I'm
sure.
okay with it.
So that,
Okay.
yeah, now the question is.
We can heat it, we just can't cool it.
Half a propane, anyway. But the other thing is what do we do about the air conditioners? So,
Well, yeah, I mean, I share all the concerns of the other board, and I don't think that this has been delayed. And I know there's frustration throughout the process, but I don't think this one is on us at all.
I mean, I apologize that, I mean, I don't do a lot of commercial. It was
Yeah,
not
no,
required for residential, that's why I didn't even think about
Right,
it.
no,
And
I understand. I'm not saying anybody did it on purpose, I believe that you didn't, but this would have been a topic of discussion. It just seems odd that we go through the process of planning board approval, the ZBA, and then a modification for something that would have been part of the substantive discussion. It's not unusual for us to relax side yard setbacks in this case, but we would have asked for a noise attenuation or at least proof that you meet the noise standard. So I don't think we can move forward without that to show that you are like at the property line, wherever you put them with whatever. I wouldn't demand attenuation if you're below what the required noise decibels are at the property line, but I have no idea if you are or not. So, I don't want to punish you for not having done this before, because I don't think that, it's punitive and probably not fair. And I trust it's not a mistake. It's just that, geez, this is it's a tough one to come up now. So I think you just have to demonstrate that you meet our sounds or noise standards.
but if we would have asked for it before.
I think we would have.
And so I think you're right. So maybe we get that now. Now, do we couple that with the potential of a public hearing, or do we wait for that information and then if we're satisfied, well, I guess if we're satisfied, we shouldn't make the
No,
public
I
hearing
think they should.
contingent on that anyway.
No, I agree. We should probably have a public hearing because it would have been
One way or the other.
and we did have a public hearing, and this wasn't part of it because it wasn't on the plan. So, I don't think it's probably going to be an issue, and I think the fact that the neighbor has AC units on the same side, like that all works for you. But it seems like we got to be thorough here at least.
So Eric, should we
Can I-
ask for the sound, the noise?
Yeah, I was actually-
specs at first and then later?
I think so, and I was also gonna mention, it was alluded to in the memo, but what you see up on the screen right now is the planting plan. Obviously, the 3 AC units are in the center there. I think if there was an enclosure that went around those, that had some sound attenuating, features to it, and then perhaps additional plantings right along the property line, I think that would go a long way to mitigate potential sound impacts. I think that's something you should consider too. The applicant already needs to, well, you could do it as a condition, or they could come back with something that meets the fire marshal's requirement for the propane tanks. So perhaps if they could come up with something, a physical enclosure as well as some additional plantings, that might go a long way to solve the
And
problem.
what if we put the resolution for the public hearing on the same night that the applicant is back with the sound attenuation? And if we feel that we want the public hearing at that point, we can vote in favor of it, schedule the public hearing. And, I'm not saying we would want it or not want it, but at least we'll have both issues on the same night.
Yeah.
And then we can move the application along that way. So one way or the other, you're gonna have to come up with sound attenuation. And we'll, to the extent that you may end up needing public hearing, we'll address that night as well, and you'll know, and then we'll schedule a public hearing.
And the propane specs, that whatever, how you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, that-
That they're on board with.
Yeah.
And so to make that happen.
Yeah, obviously for the propane, I think we need to make sure that it meets the fire marshal's standards, but also that it does the job of what it's supposed to do and screen. So
Yeah, well,
lattice.
Yeah. I mean,
I don't
would you be
know.
okay with lattice, or I was gonna do
I
black?
think lattice, but I mean, I guess, yeah, does it,
well, the planning memo says
Doesn't have
black,
to be 100%.
but
does it? Just
it's a matter of not,
two sides.
it's a matter of not blocking any potential,
no, I get it, it's just, but then we're sort of taking away half the screening and checkerboard pattern.
Yeah, it's just two sides though, so it can just be like at the bottom and
Or we could do the,
Well, I think
the
it's two
open
sides,
side.
it's just like sides.
two sides this way.
but what you don't want to do is trap propane. That's like
No, it doesn't sound.
real bad. So,
There's also a dumpster right against the propane tanks. It's a little bit dicey, right?
Yeah, I was actually surprised that the fire marshal didn't also comment that perhaps there should be bollards or some kind of physical, separation between the two. I spoke with him. He said he didn't feel it was necessary, but that is also something that
I don't
struck
want to
me in looking at
guess
this.
the fire marshal, but, it's surprising.
How is the dumpster gonna work? Is it on wheels? Is it gonna roll out, or
Or is it a fork? The kind
Because
of,
if a truck's pulling up to it, I mean.
No, it was gonna be a rollout.
Yeah, it's small enough that
Yeah.
it's a rollout, that's something I get, because the concern would be the truck kind of
Yeah.
not getting just exactly where it needs to be. And
No, it was not. Yeah, it was gonna be a rollout. I mean, it's not that large, so it doesn't, the truck is not.
some of them, you know how it is.
Yes.
Eric, the fire marshal addressed that directly?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah.
But now I wouldn't argue.
Yeah, but by virtue of the fact that it's a rollout, that
Yeah.
conversation you basically just had right now.
So-
it's necessary.
All right, so look, as quickly as you can get us the information on the sound attenuation, we'll get right back to it and move it along.
Sounds
Well,
good.
not necessarily sound attenuation, but.
Well,
what's
I'm sure
the
plenty.
output? Yeah, exactly.
I'm sure
Yeah.
plenty of us there, but I think, yeah.
Yes.
Wouldn't you do the AC company? That's what we would sound,
It's-
Yeah, it's possible that in their specification sheets that they'll have an ambient noise output level.
Times
And
three.
so we'll know what the noise is the property line, and if that's too high, then an engineer will figure out.
Well, just bear in mind when you're doing the calculations that it's times three. And also, the hours that you may be operating for the residents may be different than the hours that you're operating from the store.
Yep.
So, try and, since.
Well, we have to assume that all three are gonna be
Yeah,
on the
well,
same
that
time.
very likely, yeah, but I'm just saying, take into account various possibilities so we can move it along.
Can, I don't mean to
Yeah.
surprise you with something, but
Yeah.
would it be possible to put the AC units, if you look, as you're looking at the screen, the lower right-hand side adjacent to the deck, behind it, and then just put that screening, that vegetative screening in
Sorry,
front of it?
explain that one more time.
It out. Sorry. If you perhaps put the propane tanks in a line over here and then just move this screening out so that it was in front of it, in front of the deck here.
And not
It
have,
would be more towards the center of the property, not right on the property line where the variance was granted. And then just put the screening, so essentially these propane tanks would be where the screening is, and then you just move that up in front of it. With
yeah, I mean,
grass.
that might look a little weird, but I mean,
Just an option, a thought of an alternative.
I can talk to the builder and the owner if that's something. I mean, is that a concern?
But they're enclosed, you're worried about the.
But Eric, what are you trying to accomplish with it? What's the purpose?
Did I say I think I just said the propane.
Yeah, AC.
Yeah, did you mean the AC unit?
The AC.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Oh.
Actually, it seems like that's a really good idea.
That might be a good idea. That way you don't have to worry about any of that stuff.
Why not just switch them? But
We're,
see on the back.
sorry, unless you're the applicant.
Although the building, I believe, is right at the 10-foot setback, correct? So.
But
it
the
would
accessory,
still-
though,
Okay.
they're accessory structures, so the board, could
Could,
wait.
okay, but it would still, okay.
You can play with it.
Okay, let me,
I'm open to either of them. I mean, I think that the side, you have an argument because it's against other AC units, so it's sort of a little ambivalent, but I think you should take a close look to make the best plan possible considering this.
yeah, we'll definitely look at both and,
how do the apartments get up to their apartment?
through the back, there is, you have the plans up?
And we'll even do.
So that covered porch,
Yeah, they walk,
Outside stairwell?
It's inside, I believe.
Okay.
Basement, first floor. All right, gotta get this.
Yeah, right when you walk into the right.
Stairwell at the rear. When you come in the rear entrance, there's essentially a landing there.
And that deck is for their use.
On the second floor?
Oh, it's only on the
Second floor.
It's first floor and second floor above in the back.
So it's sort of the outdoor space for the apartments.
Yes. Yeah.
So that would be a concern about putting a bunch of things right in the deck next to
It's already.
AC units.
AC.
My fault.
Just go back to the noise issue, which is something for the apartment, something for us to address when you come back as an impact on the apartment. Okay?
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
You too. Next is American Tower, 103 Flagging Hole Road. Ian, Eric, and is the applicant, you're the applicant, very good. And Mr. Schnell is here also on that. Okay. So we'll hear from Eric and Emergency Services, and then we'll hear from the applicant, and then we'll hear from the board.
You'll hear from me if I can figure out how to work this. One second.
Yeah, I missed the announcement. It's the Startup branch.
Oh, gosh, I'm sorry, I should have announced it. Yeah, Star Trek is off for tonight. I'm sorry, yeah.
Yeah, at the request of the applicant.
Yeah, we got a letter, came in yesterday, I'm sorry, I should imagine that to be at the top of the media.
Okay, so
Because the public hearing was supposed to be on Sunday. So we're gonna, after this American Tower, we'll move to Monroe Hospital.
okay. So there were a number of remaining outstanding issues, two of which pertain to the generator. First was fuel containment. The applicant submitted specifications for the proposed emergency diesel generator, which is to service AT&T and T-Mobile. Verizon has an existing generator that it will continue to use, and the town of East Hampton is to utilize a new propane generator. The new diesel generator is proposed to contain a double-line self-contained fuel tank situated on a concrete pad. It's not clear to the planning department what the capacity of the generator is, but the planning department does recommend, we did previously, that propane or another non-liquid fuel source be utilized. However, the board has approved diesel generators at other personal wireless service facilities in the past and should discuss that issue with the applicants. With regard to generator noise, the generator has been proposed with a noise attenuating acoustic enclosure. The applicants have submitted a full noise report. The results of the report can be found in Exhibit B of the most recent submission. The study verifies that the generator will meet the permitted sound level maximums of Chapter 185 of the Town Code for both nighttime and daytime in residential zoning districts. The planning department finds this acceptable. The board should determine if it agrees. The remaining outstanding issue was with regard to tower height. At the time of the last review, the board had questioned whether or not 185 feet above ground level was completely necessary and required. The town's wireless consulting firm, Cityscape, and the town's communications technician have offered comments with regard to this issue. The planning department defers to their expertise on the matter, and the board should read the most recent report from Cityscape, which was dated September 6th. In conclusion, it appears that the applicants have addressed the outstanding items from the board's previous review. Provided the board agrees, then the application is complete and ready to be scheduled for a public hearing. Prior to the hearing, the planning department will prepare the environmental assessment form, parts 2 and 3. It is recommended and assumed that the board will make a negative declaration. However, the board should also discuss secret at this time and direct the planning department accordingly.
Thanks very much. Does Mr. Schnell wish to be heard on this? Was there good questions? Very good. Yes. So when we get to the discussion. Okay. The applicant wishes to be heard.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Lucia Chiaro. with Cuddy and Fader, and we represent American Tower, the applicant. I would just request that the board deem the application complete and schedule the public hearing so that way we can move forward. I'm happy to answer any questions that the board may have at this time.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I'm satisfied. I think that I read a memo from Eddie Snell. I read the cityscape memo. I don't know anything about how tall towers have to be to function. Obviously, this is an important tower to function, so I'll defer to the experts on that. And I think otherwise, you've answered all of our questions. I know this is not an uncontroversial application or situation in general, but I think the application is complete. Eric, I guess I got a question for you, which is the secret. What kind of guidance are you looking?
Yeah, just verifying that the board intends to make a negative declaration so that we can prepare the EAF, which we'll have for you at the next meeting.
Yeah, I think so. I think with the caveat that this will have a public hearing. I expect there will be comments. I'm going to keep a very open mind about how it ends up, but it would be good to keep the process.
Does anyone else have any comments on this particular application?
I do have a question. Sure. I'm not sure what conversations you've had with us or the planning department about using propane instead of diesel for the generator. Can you comment on that?
Yes, I did. I actually spoke with American Tower. They actually don't deploy propane generators, which I found interesting. And the reason being that they have thousands of sites throughout the United States. So they work with certain vendors for their backup generators and their equipment. And right now it's always has been diesel. If there is a concern about fuel containment, in addition to the double-walled fuel tank, we can certainly explore some sort of secondary containment within that area where the generator is located. The tank is actually in the generator, my understanding. So we can certainly talk to them about that and explore that as an option. Yeah.
Mr. Randy?
Well, I like that. I like if you have the double wall and then you have
Additional
if
containment.
it fails, it'll hold the volume of the tank. That's sort of belt and suspenders. I mean, we prefer propane, but that's a sensitive area there. We don't want any oil spilled during delivery or from a leaky tank. So I think that it's fair to say the board would prefer propane if you.
Sounds like they have a business
I understand that, but I think we can say again, if you have to use your contract, but East Hampton's special.
Well, it's not really our concern. I mean, if we say propane,
it'll have to be propane.
I'm okay with diesel. I think if you do the secondary containment, we've been, harder on this at times than others, but usually pretty hard. I think we want to make sure that if there's some sort of basin that the whole thing sits in, it doesn't just collect rainwater and it sits in water. Mm-hmm. So if you go that route, I think you should probably have a roof over it or something too. This has been a debate before that we never, I don't think, fully settled, but I think having a metal tank, pool of water is not ideal. So just think it all the way through.
Yeah, the Suffolk County Health Department has a lot of information about fuel storage, hazardous material storage, and I don't know if this tank reaches their threshold. I don't know how many gallons you're talking about there.
Yeah, it's a.
When you. There you go. Take it worth your while.
Off the top of my head, when you exceed 500 gallons on a tax map parcel, every tank has to be registered. And that includes your home heating oil and whatever. This tank is laid out, does meet Suffolk County's requirements if it were to be registered. It does. It's double containment, so it does.
Specs. It
meets the minimum spec. And I have seen with the pools of water, Nassau County, every tank needs to be triple containment. So they use a off-the-shelf double containment tank and then they put it into this concrete pit, which has a little drain valve, which is great if you have somebody there every day to go drain the rainwater off.
Right.
But these sites that are visited once a month, once a quarter, you're putting a steel tank in a swimming pool, and it's just gonna.
I'd be more worried about that scenario than just a double wall tank, unless we have,
Can you put a roof on that, like he had said?
You could, but it's still gonna get water and leaves and mice and whatever else is gonna move in there, which is gonna speed degradation of the steel, leading to a leak. The county response to that is that you have a intersilo monitoring system. So you actually have a water and fuel sensor inside of the secondary containment. So once something does leak out of the primary tank into the secondary tank, it sets off an alarm, audible and monitored by somebody.
What about if it's just collected water?
Then somebody comes to the site and you're supposed to analyze it and figure out what went on.
Right, but it isn't just a matter of fuel leaking into the container.
well, the problem is, but in that scenario, if water is getting in, then the outside, one of the two.
Something's wrong with it, it needs to be
He's not
serviced,
talking about
yeah.
the pit, he's talking about within the actual.
Yeah, no, I know, I get it.
I would vote for, I didn't know that, that's why it's good to have experts here.
Yeah, that is the standard, like if you go somewhere with a lot of oil tanks, like the Parks Department, if you ever come here at a random time, the buzzer's always going off because there's water getting into the secondary containment, and the town won't fix it, but it's not my problem. Somebody goes over there and just presses the reset button, and until it rains the next time, you know, it's all good.
But, I mean, they don't, assuming they don't just hit the reset button. Let's say it's a private owner who has to follow rules, that they come in and they drain it, and that resolves the problem until the next time that the rain fills up large enough
When it's
to
a
set off the monitors.
When it's a registered tank, there's some kind of recertification process, I believe, every few years. I don't know all the details on that because I don't deal with any of them. I looked into this enough to know that I don't want to deal with it and switched everything to propane.
Hear the good word of propane? You might want to pass that on.
I did, trust me.
Yeah.
You know, can't they go outside of their normal contract? And
They definitely could.
I can certainly ask again, you
Yes.
know, I will, and I
The
will.
more we're hearing, the more it sounds like it might be.
Yeah, no, I understand. I'll certainly ask again. And to Mr. Snell's point, these facilities are monitored remotely 24/7. So they can easily add a sensor, so that way it is monitored. And if an alarm goes off, a technician is dispatched.
so Long Island is different from a lot of your Turpin, that
Yeah.
it's a sole source aquifer.
Yes,
So that's a federal designation. So maybe they could consider propane
It's also very
sole
close to
source
the water.
aquifer.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, yeah, that's the
Very close to
underlying
the
problem.
today.
So you're gonna pursue this with American Power?
I will absolutely.
You got that?
My other question,
Thank you.
given Eddie, I've been making Eddie earn his salary for us. But I think, and I don't think anybody disagrees with me, what we would like in East Hampton is great cell service and scenic beauty. And a lot of the towers that have been built, for example, the one the town built back here, the Hammonds Fire Department, I think most of the big cell towers we have here are anything but scenic. And so the question becomes, is there a way to get both? Is there a way to minimize the adverse impact to the character and scenery of the town and have the cell service? That's the question. Now, that goes to, from what Eddie has provided today, you need this direct microwave from the Blue Bay Tower to the Northwest Tower. So I have a couple of questions about some of the details of that, this tree height, the direct signal from the tower proposed tower to the Northwest Tower. In particular, I took a look at the topography between Blue Bay and the northwest tower. Okay. Lupe is at about elevation 40, and the northwest tower is at about elevation 90. And in between, the highest ridge line I see is about 150. That's assuming you have to pass over the highest ridge line elevation.
Yeah, we're a little offset, but
Oh, well, that's even better.
yeah.
So then you factor into that this assumption by, I guess, the USGS that we have 100-foot trees. And I don't think we do. I don't think we have 100-foot trees. So there's a couple of things there. One is there's maybe a ridge elevation between those two towers of 150 feet that is maybe 20 feet wide. And in order to deal with that, now Eddie's saying that we don't even have to go over that high point. In order to deal with that, we're building a tower that is high enough to go over perhaps the highest ridge line that we don't need to go over, and also for 100-foot trees, because that's what the federal government uses. So I just wonder if we can be a little more specific in terms of, but I have a bunch of questions for Eddie. Is the microwave signal that you said is line of sight, is that the one on the whip antenna at the top?
Those are the dishes.
Or the dishes, but for the emergency services or for the telephone?
Both.
Both.
Well, both, the whips and the dishes are both public safety.
Okay.
The rectangular panels are the public telephone.
So the dishes that you need the line of sight for are set, what, 170 is the lowest?
Yeah, so how we lay the tower out, we put the antennas sticking above the top of the steel because that's free space that you can't use otherwise. That's mounted to approximately 5 foot tall, what we call a sidearm, that pushes the antenna off the side of the towers to get more horizontal spacing between the antennas. So we have on this design 180 foot from the top of the dish to 170 for the bottom of the dish. So all the microwave heights for dish mounting, those are all center lines. That's the center of the dish.
Okay.
And when we do these designs, we do them on a 6 foot diameter dish. So if it's 175 foot center line, that means the top of the dish is at 179. So it's pretty close to the bottom of that upper sidearm.
So then let's say that you need line of sight at 170, 180 to give you something. And that if we really knew how tall the trees are, because most of the first part of the run is over 3 Mile Harbor.
Yep.
There's no obstruction from Camp Blue Bay until you get on the other side of 3 Mile Harbor. And then there's just this small area really that could potentially have trees that are in the way. So my question is, can we get more specific about the height of the trees and your line of sight, perhaps by some measuring?
Well, I think they have a line of sight thing, because if they were counting on going over that ridge, the tower would work, the map.
Are you looking to shorten the tower? Is that the idea?
Yeah.
Or take down the ridge.
Sorry.
Come on, Sam. Come on.
Never ask a question you don't believe.
No, I just think, I don't think, because it's.
How much do you think you're gonna do?
I don't know. I mean, even, I think 20 feet, it makes a difference.
So instead of, what's it, 185, is that the year?
But Eddie's probably,
You want
I
to
just-
go from
Well,
185 to
Cityscape,
165?
Cityscape basically says that, that the analysis that Eddie did looks good to them. But Eddie might want to hire a microwave engineer. I'm just questioning the assumptions that are used in this, which is that the USGS says we should use 100-foot tree cover. And so that's all. I'm just putting it out there that I think because this is such a highly technical area and these local boards, we don't have this expertise.
But it's a highly technical area, and we have technicians, and we have cityscape, and we have the experts in the town. So I'm wondering,
Well, I'm questioning if you were trying this, would you want to know why did USGS use 100-foot tree height nationwide?
I would want to know that I have experts in the house.
Correct.
That's what I want to know. I have the experts, and listen, you certainly don't have to trust the experts.
No, I trust, well, I don't really trust the USGS to give us our tree height. No.
But then you're seriously, and I'm not saying this to be cute, then you're meddling with the primal forces of nature. Because, and I don't just mean the height of the tree. I mean, there have to be certain standards that are accepted. And I would say that the federal government's estimation, even if you, by anecdotal knowledge, think that it's not, that they're off, you have a heck of a tree to climb to get past the idea that the federal government standards are all
Why can't we just ask for a measurement? Why can't we just ask for a measurement? They're gonna have a crane out there to do
Sir, if you're not, if you want to be heard, we can have you speak, because we do allow public comment.
I'm saying maybe as part of the visual analysis, we're gonna have bones, cranes.
You know
Well,
what?
can I make a point, actually, and that's,
I mean, we've seen,
yeah, I was
we
just
have the
gonna,
renderings.
point out one thing in particular. You did receive a full set of visual analysis from, I believe, 30 plus different points around this site. Those visual analyses used photos of the existing conditions. American Tower did a crane simulation where they brought a crane to the site, and then from that, created the visualizations of the height of the tower. So that's the visualizations that you've already received use the existing conditions. There's not an assumption of tree height. It's using the photos from specific locations towards the site. And the board has already said that they felt those visualizations were adequate and was asked the specific question of whether or not you needed additional ones, and said that you said on the record at one of the previous meetings that you felt that you did not need that. The other thing I'll point out, I think it's common sense, but obviously, Eddie and Cityscape have reviewed what's needed for emergency services. Remember, this tower has two components to it. It's providing an important link in Springs in the emergency services communications system, but it's also providing cell coverage for a majority of Springs. The shorter you make this tower, the less portion of Springs is going to have cell service.
Is that it's not a line of sight.
Then you need another tower.
Calculator.
And then you need another tower.
You don't need line of sight for cell service.
Everything radio is line of sight.
Okay. All right. So I'm just trying to make sure that
And I have,
it's as beautiful as possible.
if I have to say this,
And I will also point out, on the bright side, this is a monopole design, so it's not a lattice tower like this one or the one at the Amagansett Fire Department. So it is somewhat less conspicuous. Again, it is a very tall structure with equipment mounted on it, so I'm not going to give you the illusion that it will be invisible. The visualizations demonstrate that it can be viewed from various locations, although certainly not the majority of the ones chosen. But also keep that in mind. It is a lower profile design than what's out here at Town Hall or at the Amagansett Fire Department, which are lattice towers.
yeah, no, I just wanted, I spent a lot of time in Springs, it's about Ian and Ed, and this year was really, really bad. You could not make a single, places that I used to always be able to make phone calls. So it's just, maybe the volume is what causes that, more tree leaves, whatever it is. But Springs it's in bad shape in terms of cell service.
This will go a long way to ameliorating that, I hope. I expect, I should say, I hope.
Well, any emergency service.
And, on all these, I'm always driven by the need for the emergency services. But at the same time, we can get more coverage in Springs in particular. And if that means 20 feet higher, then fine. I'm good with that. We've already marred the skyline as with the 165 feet. I'd rather make sure that we get as many people getting coverage as we can, and.
That's a great comment.
Go, please.
I just want to say, I really appreciate that Randy brought the subject up and that we've had this discussion on the record, because there are a lot of people who really have questions behind the issue in the public. And I think it's useful to have had this conversation and have gotten the answers. I'd love it if it were 20 feet shorter, and I live literally across the road from the site myself personally, right? But not just for that reason. But I think we've kind of put it to bed, but I want to thank you for bringing it up. I think it was an important conversation.
I'm not minimizing.
We'll hear from the public.
Yeah,
Ways to go.
All right, so, yes. Is the waste generation, that's the last one. So is the information, if nobody else has any questions or comments, or let's go to the consensus issues, is the information pertaining to the noise generation acceptable? Do we have?
Yes.
Okay. Information pertaining to fuel containment acceptable, and is diesel an acceptable fuel source? I think we've covered that, and you're going to look into.
Absolutely, yes.
And again, you know, I'm not, Randy's right, this is East Hampton.
Yes.
So, I mean,
I'll press the point further.
yeah, let them know.
Yeah. I will.
Okay, is the application complete and ready to be scheduled for public?
With some of those.
Well, we'll get those, we'll get that information,
Mhm.
and presumably we'll have that information at the same time that we'll have the resolution on for the public hearing.
We intended to have the resolution on along with the EAF for the meeting next week, a week from today.
Do you think you can get that information about the propane for the next meeting?
I'll try.
Because that way we can.
And I would say that as far as completeness of, submission items, I think it's otherwise complete. Again, you will be hearing from the public. I expect that there'll be a lot of comment on it. So it's something that I think the applicant could work on in the interim.
Yeah.
Obviously, when you hear public comments, and often when you hear a lot of public comments, there are, post-hearing discussions that the board will have, and perhaps conditions or minor changes to the project. I think we could probably handle it in that respect.
Yeah, no, that's fine. And I don't expect that, the backup generation is going to be a public comment that we're going to, we may, but I don't expect that's where the focus of the public comment is going to be. When we hear it. And finally, but again, if you can get it for us, that way when we put it up for public hearing, we can give the public a better sense of where this is. All right, finally, do we need the planning board to do an EAF? Should I ask whether do we make that, Chris?
Yeah, I'd say.
I
would. Make that, okay, make that.
Mhm.
All right.
I have one more question for the applicant.
Yeah, okay.
Once you get a building permit, how long will it take you to put the shower?
Next week.
That's a
it's
good
working.
question.
I think it's that people are gonna.
Yeah, I'll try and get a good estimate on that. Once the building permit's issued, that means that the geotech has been done and the tower's been designed and they've ordered the tower, and that's what takes time,
Oh,
so.
that may take several months.
Yeah, so it's approval, hopefully, from the planning board, and then they start all that work to design it, so that way they have construction drawings for submission to the building department. The actual installation probably takes 4 to 6 weeks, and then the carriers have to come in and put in their equipment and optimize it and so forth, but to get the steel in the
Spring before.
Yeah.
I mean, we would, I imagine that the public would want to know that it's up certainly for next summer.
Yeah, I think that could work. Yeah.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, great talk.
I should have mentioned earlier when I was going over the disabled list, that start time is not on tonight. So we're going to go right to Monroe Osborne modification. We have two members who are refusing on that. And well, actually, Ian, you're on the lead on that. So
That's why,
okay, sorry.
Notify you apologetically.
Got it. All right.
But again,
So there are a few of us, so we can do a kind of more freewheeling discussion. Is the applicant Excuse me. Folks. Randy, you want to?
Tree.
I'm sorry.
Tree talk.
Is the applicant here on Osborne?
Don't see one.
Do they know that it's on for tonight?
They've been notified.
What do we do?
No, they've been notified. We didn't hear any reason, I mean, we heard nothing about wanting to postpone it.
I mean, if you want to postpone it, but I have verification here from the administrative staff of the planning department that the applicant, who is Jacqueline Wilson, was notified, and we spoke directly with them.
You spoke directly with them and they knew about the application being on for tonight?
I did not personally, but
No, the records of the planning
yes,
department
yes.
say that?
yes, over the phone.
We're comfortable
I mean,
going
if you're
forward.
not comfortable doing it.
No, if we know that they were here, or they know that they were notified, then,
Just save
you
them
know.
money and trouble.
Well, it isn't a matter of that, it's a matter of public, of giving the applicant, due process, and I'm not about to deny any applicant due process.
Sam, I don't mean to-
question about whether they knew about it.
Yeah, no, there is no question. I'm positive that they knew about it. We've been double checking that because the board has had issues with that in the past. I will mention though that, the board does have a meeting next week and the week after. So we could try to contact them and make sure that they have a representative here. But yes, they were notified.
Well, we can discuss it and if there's any questions that we feel, right?
Is there a delayed written response period still?
No.
Well, this is,
That's not what we've got tonight.
yeah, and remember, this is a modification request of a sub-waiver from 1974 as well, so.
So it's just a discussion. Right.
Well, no, we're gonna decide whether to maintain the single existing driveway, or not. We're gonna come to a substantive decision tonight.
Oh, I see, we could postpone.
And we could postpone that, but look.
And you do have public comments submitted to the record on the matter, just so you know, they were submitted this afternoon.
Yeah, I know. Well, they were submitted this afternoon, and I understand it's public comments, it's not the applicant giving us.
Correct,
So it's not an issue, a matter of the public commenting on it, but we do have the interest of digesting the public comments. Have the board members all seen the public comments and read it?
I saw one letter, yes.
Yeah,
See, doesn't the applicant have the right to respond to public comment?
that too.
I mean, whether we extend the hearing or not, don't they always?
Well, that's one of the,
Well, the record's closed, they can't.
yeah, but there is no record, it's not like a public.
Yeah,
hearing.
there's no
It's
hearing.
not a public hearing, it's not, I didn't say, if you were doing a public hearing, that would be the issue. But you do raise a good point, that if we receive public comment, all right, and we make a determination, and it's based on that public comment, well, not based on, but that's part of the record of why we make the determination, then then the applicant can say, well, I didn't know.
Yeah, and to clarify further to that point, just the timing of when those comments were received this afternoon. I do know for a fact that the planning department did not reach out to the applicant and make them aware of those public comments. So just if you want to
No,
factor that
so
in.
look, what is my concern? My concern is that I don't want to make a determination, which I don't know right now whether it's pro or adverse, obviously. But if it's turned out to be adverse and a comment came in from the public, and it can be said by the applicant that, well, if I had known, I would have been there. And we can't fault the public for giving a late comment because I don't think we can, I don't think we have in the past. Again, different from the applicant giving us late comments, which we don't allow because we need the planning department to digest when the applicant comes in with something that at the last minute. But since we have public comment, and let me ask this: is there a public hearing issue with this, or because it's once again, like one night, it's a modification issue, so we could have a public hearing on it.
But generally, you usually don't. For
Generally, we
modifications,
wouldn't,
but you do have the option.
We could, but and just to contrast this with the last matter where we may have a public hearing, that was an applicant issue. that triggers the potential of a public hearing. This would be not an applicant issue, but a matter of responding to the public comment that we received. So maybe the thing to do is to make sure that the applicant knows that there was a public comment that came in after we had spoken to them and told them that there was going to be on tonight's agenda, give them an opportunity and have an opportunity to speak to the public comment.
Yeah, so you definitely can do that if you.
Yeah, and just to elaborate on that, like I said, most of the time with modifications, first of all, most of them are site plan modifications, but most of the time you don't hold public hearings, but most of the time you also don't receive public comments on those modifications. They're usually very minor.
It isn't a matter of not holding a public hearing. It's a matter of why would we hold a public hearing? And again, I can't get out of my, contrasting this with the earlier application. That one, there is a reason, because we would have done it had we known. It would have been part of, theoretically, the public hearing had we known. This is more along the lines of ensuring that if we were to give an adverse decision to the applicant tonight, and this letter is part of the record, because there is no foreclosing of the record at this point, that the applicant, I wouldn't want the applicant to, I don't know, bring an Article 78 on the grounds that they didn't get due process.
Can I make another
Go right ahead.
suggestion? Why, your public hearing law allows us only to discuss these matters in the open.
That's correct.
So why don't we discuss the public notice that we received? Hash out
Public comment.
hash out the issues. Don't make a decision and allow the applicant to come back and give their.
I think it's a matter of efficiency at that point.
Well, regarding efficiency, I think to add another, layer to next week's meeting, which has already been said, we have time tonight, it's only 7:30.
The time tonight, because for one thing, the applicant wouldn't have the opportunity, more than mere efficiency is the thing that jumps to mind. But, and again, my focus comes back to due process. The applicant would probably argue, if I were arguing, I would say, I wanted to be there to hear what was said and to be able to comment in the moment, and for the board to have their discussion now and basically stop and then wait for me to come in. I don't know. And I guess that circles back to efficiency. Either way, anyway, look at
Doesn't the applicant have a responsibility to be here?
Yeah, but the issue is the reason that yes, but the applicant could say reasonably, I read the planning board memo, I understand what it says, and I don't have anything I want to say or add to that, and I'll run the risk that the board members might have a question to me that I'm not there to answer. I get that, and I agree with you. My problem is that we have a matter, we have something that's been added to the record, and that item that's been added to the record could affect our decision. I mean, it's in there. So I'm concerned the applicant would turn around and say, if I had known, I would have been there. I was willing to roll the dice just based on the application.
Have there been discussions or determinations made without the applicant here?
Rarely.
Yes.
Well, that's for I'm not sure which one you're talking about. I think I know which one you're talking about.
The one in Montauk.
In your experience, yeah.
In my short time,
Right,
yeah, they haven't been here.
Right, but in the past, we
Are not ideal.
no, it isn't, and they run the risk. But and they did in that application.
And then we would discuss it again. We didn't make any moves. So you're right. I think we should probably postpone it, because in the end, we ended up not doing anything with it.
And also,
my point is that.
But it gets
we can
rehashed
learn-
again,
But it's not rehashing, it's learning about the matter.
No, but it's gonna
We
be
become
redone.
more educated about the issue. It's not like we're making.
I don't disagree with that, and I would like a little bit of clarity on this myself.
Well, clarity on what? On the process or on?
On the application, on who wants what driveway, what has been there in the past. I was there, before I came to here, I drove up there to see what was going on. And I noticed the 116 post office box is at the northern driveway. I'm like, how long has that been there? Since 1974?
You see, and there you are.
See,
If you have, okay, so that's what, look, if you have questions about that, then, I mean, obviously, the applicant, you could direct them to those
I thought
questions.
I know it.
But I keep, well, you'll be able to ask them, I just keep coming back to my fear of the applicant saying, you have this before you, I didn't mention.
We're not shutting them
I
out.
understand, I said, you want to next week.
I had the same question before I looked at this.
Yeah, hey, Sam, I agree with Lou. I think we're going too far. I mean, we also have an obligation to process the public's business. And, you know, our staff has reviewed it. They knew it was
Well,
on the
actually,
agenda.
that's actually a question. Has the staff, is your report include any responses to this letter?
No, it does not. Because it predates.
It came into, I don't see that we're deciding anything.
I don't see any point to breaking up conversation. I don't see why you want to do that.
Well, I agree with you. I think we should discuss it. And we should discuss the correspondence. It's an open meeting. They can review the thing. They can come in. I don't see why we're deferring to somebody who just didn't show up.
It's not, well,
You couldn't run government that way.
yeah, but Randy, it's not a matter of deferring if someone doesn't show up. It's a matter of not putting ourselves in a position of making a decision based on a document that's in the record.
We're not making a decision.
Yeah, I know, you're saying you want to put it off, and then I come back with that, the idea that I think we should have one single discussion about it at one time. I really do.
Yeah, I would, just my 2 cents, on behalf of the planning department, I think the best course of action would be to put this on the agenda for the 28th, not next week, but the week after. The board has the good fortune in this case of having meetings 3 weeks in a row. That way, you know, the applicant would be aware of the public comments. It would give myself an opportunity to, you know, digest them and report back. And then I'd also point out too, you do have the added kind of wrinkle here in this particular instance where 2 of the planning board members have needed to recuse themselves. So I think it would probably be most efficient and, you know, best from my perspective, from the planning department, to put the matter off so that the applicant has a chance to be here and answer any questions that you have.
And let's make sure that the applicant knows 2 things. We put in the letter that we put it off, and that there was public comment, and that having been put off, they have an opportunity to address the public comment. Again, it's they don't attend at their own peril. Yes, that's true. But
Well, what's convincing about what Eric said?
having 2 people on board, you want
No, not at all. I don't see how that pertains to that.
because it allows more information.
No, because if he's going to digest the public comment and rewrite his report to address the issues in the public comment, then in that case, then I would vote to delay.
There's a lot of this turns on whether there was an error or not.
Right.
The public comment says there's no error. It's very clear. The initial planning board review said maybe there was an error. So that's a critical. I have a question too for Eric. I don't know if this is, I'm not clear whether it says that this house was donated to Containment Trust. Does that mean, I know when I was working in the not-for-profit sector, you got 2 types of gifts. One was called a trade land. They give it to you and you sell it, take the money.
Mm-hmm.
And one was for, say, staff housing. It was intended that the land trust was going to use it for their mission. And I don't know which this is, because I'm getting the feeling that the owner of the house wants to have the old driveway. And I don't know how that fits in.
Yeah, I can't answer that question. I think only the applicants or their representative probably could. which is another reason I think it would probably be best to have them present for
Okay,
the
well,
discussion.
well, 28th,
Yeah, 2 weeks, just because
you need
we
that?
need to, we set the agenda on Friday, which is.
Yeah, I know,
day and a half,
and I know what the 21st agenda looks like already, so. All right, we're not to the
So
20th.
if they don't show up then,
Oh, yeah, no.
It doesn't matter, we'll have 2 weeks to read the letter.
Yeah, I understand, it's all about, giving the opportunity to be heard. That's what it is.
So let me ask you, this hypothetical, you don't have to answer me. What if we just put it on the agenda, there's another letter from the public the day of our meeting, and they don't show up
Which is
again?
entirely possible. And no, it is, and so in the letter, we should add that, if any further comments come in, we'll address them at that, in the meeting, because now they've been given absolute knowledge that we're gonna be on, and that there have been public comments, and there may be more public comments. So I don't think we can tell them to come in or even recommend that they come in, but we can tell them that there has been public comments, and based on the fact that there have been public comments, there may be more public comments that they should consider. That's it. Am I overstepping on that?
No, no, no.
What's that term in golf when you get a second try?
Mulligan.
They had one mulligan.
Is that the application? All right, very good. So, all right, so that's paid. So now we are back, and we are now in our regular meeting. Okay? Glad you refused yourself. Let's run right through this. 3 Mile Harbor, just take your seat there. First one comes, you ready?
Hang on, let me get it. This is the extension of time, right?
Yep.
Okay. In the matter of the application of 3 Mile Harbor Vista 2 minor subdivision, Suffolk County Tax Map 300-94-2-1, extension of time. I have read the resolution and call for its adoption.
Is there a second? Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passed. 7. Verizon and Montauk Community Church modification 2. Sharon, it's yours.
Yep. In the matter of the application of Verizon at Montauk Community Church site plan special permit personal wireless service facility modification 2, tax map number 300-44-2-13. I've read this resolution and it's approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passed 7-0. Bishop 375 Montauk Highway. Lou.
In the matter of the application of Bishop 375 Montauk Highway Site Plan Special Permit Personal Wireless Service Facility, Suffolk County Tax Map number 300-44-1-9.1. I have read the site plan special permit approval and I move for its adoption.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passed 7-0. Verizon at 260 Fireplace Road, Sharon.
With the upgrading.
Yes.
Okay, in the matter of the application of Verizon Wireless at 260 Springs Fireplace Road, formerly known as 258 Springs Fireplace Road, personal wireless service facility, site plan, special permit modification 2, tax map number 300-3.5-3-16.1. I move to approve this resolution.
Just a question, is this the highway department?
Verizon at 260?
Yeah.
Yes.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Passed 7-0. Barbara Barn.
The matter of the application of Barbara Barn site plan for an extension of time until September 19th, 2022. Rather, that's a pretty short extension. There's some history on this. Not a lot of time to leave themselves. But I've read the resolution and move for its adoption.
September 19th, when we're gonna, is that right? September 19th?
It looks like this goes back quite a ways and they're probably just trying to get current and there might be another extension coming out.
I'm sorry,
McCall.
extension of time?
Yeah.
Yeah, it would go from because the resolution was a certain date, so it's not respective of your meeting dates. So when the date of the resolution, and then there was 3 years to get a CO, and then so the extension goes from the resolution date. So as long as the resolution date was September 19th of whatever year, then yes, it's probably it should be accurate.
2022?
But it's 2022.
Problem with this, it came in at a certain time and Eric and Nancy had to make a determination whether the sanitary was. So that took a while to get that. So he's just gonna have to come in and pay another fee.
They'll have to do another extension.
Yeah.
They're just getting the application current.
Yeah, basically.
Okay, so in that case, then they have like 5 days to get in to get that done.
Well, the motion is on the table.
Is there a second? Was there a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That's 7-0. And finally, this is the public hearing that was supposed to be on tonight. We're rescheduling it. Ed?
Yes, in the matter of the application of Daniel Porkin Artist Studio, Suffolk County Tax Map 300-106-1-18, scheduled public hearing. Public hearing is scheduled Wednesday, October 19th, 2022 at 7 p.m. or soon thereafter is a matter of the year.
Did he approve the date?
What's that?
Did he approve the date?
Yes, so I have read the resolution called construction.
Is there a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
That's 7-0. Folks, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Go ahead.
Motion to adjourn?
Is there a second? We're adjourned. We're done.